not nearly as funny as they are. So, yeah, it's pretty funny. I have been publishing my own books for a while, and some of them have been picked up by major publishers, and I think it's quite an exciting time to be a reader and a writer, because the ability to get your work out there has become democratized. Anybody can now write a story, and with absolutely zero dollars spent to get their books distributed worldwide. So it just takes a lot of time and energy and effort. And since if you're motivated, everyone has that. Not everyone has a big pile of cash to print 10,000 books and get distribution and advertising and all that. So that's why I really see this as a democratizing force. And you look at what Louis C.K. has done for comedians, what McElroy and Ryan have done with their music, just putting on iTunes. I think this is happening in the publishing industry, and it's very exciting. And if you're a fan of like the small guy trying to fight his way up with the Goliaths, it's a cool thing to root for. If you're a fan of readers who want more variety and not the same stories over and over again, it's something to root for. And if you're an aspiring writer, it's something to be very exciting about, because while I have, unfortunately, for the people that have to look at the poster, I've unfortunately become kind of the poster boy for self-publishing. But and I've written online about this. I really think the unsung heroes of the story of self-publishing are the number of authors who are making enough to change their lives, just several $100s a month. And it's more than a lot of traditionally published authors make. Who I know a lot of them, and they have jobs. They teach university creative writing in order to pay the bills. So thousands of people are changing their lives by getting their stories out there. And the reason they're doing well is because they're reaching readers who enjoy their stories. So it's working for everybody.
Now speaking of that, Hugh, when you were an aspiring writer, you were working as a bookseller, right? And tell me about how that came to be. How did Wool come to be while you were writing? Whenever you had free time, is that sort of the story?
Yeah, it helps not to have a social life if you want to get a lot of this done. So it is challenging. I mean, a lot of people say, how do you manage your time? Well, you have to really love it. You have to be as passionate about this as you would be about playing video games or reading comics, or all the things that I did with my time for 20 plus years before I finally started finishing books. When I wrote my first novel, it taught me that this is something I could do. And then I got addicted to the process and started writing a lot. And I would get up and write before I went to work. I would write on my lunch break. I just found time every single day to write. And what's frustrating is if you sit down for a few days and write, you'll feel like you're not getting much done. You're like, oh my God, all that effort, and all I did was this. But if you write every single day, it's just amazing what that amount of continuous effort will do. And you'll eventually be sitting on a novel and you can't believe you did it.
It's interesting. We were talking earlier, and I think my wife asked you a question: when did you start writing? At an early age, but you made the point. But I didn't start finishing. I started writing novels at a young age, but I didn't start finishing novels until I was 32. And that's interesting. I mean, it's true, but you got to keep sticking with it, and eventually you did. And once you did, well, let's talk about that. And so you finish this novel, and you decide, instead of going to a traditional publisher, you didn't even really have an agent or anything at that point originally, right? And you decided to go the E route. Is that correct?
Well,
how did that happen?
Well, my very first novel, and I don't have one with me. I got mobbed up there, and I didn't prepare for this adequately. But my very first novel was a young adult space opera story, and so I wrote it basically for my wife. I was working as a book critic at the time, and I would read and review books all day. And I was going to conferences, and it would be a lot like this. You'd come and sit on a panel, and I would sit back there and write notes for the website. And Carolyn Todd was on this panel, and she lectured someone who asked, like, hey, I've always wanted to be a writer. I can't seem to get it done. I don't need to talk to what I need to do. And she was like, she slapped the table and said, you need to stop thinking about being a writer, and stop talking about being a writer, and stop dreaming about being a writer. You need to write. And she was like very animated. And I was like, my hair's blown back. I was like that RCA commercial, I felt like she was talking to me, because that had been my whole life. So I went home from that conference and really poured myself into this story. My wife would come home and read like 15 pages and say, oh my God, that's awesome. What happens next? And I would say, I have no idea what happens next. So she'd go off to work. She's like, well, I want to know what happens next. So I would do my work writing, then I would pound my energy into the story. And she motivated me, her and Carolyn Todd together kind of motivated me into finishing my first novel. I started passing it around. I didn't think it was something that deserved to be published, and I'd worked in the book industry enough as a critic to know you're out of your mind if you think your book is going to get published. Like 99% of books submitted to agents and editors never make it out of what they call the slush pile. And it's an intern who sits there and reads these, and they very quickly, just a couple of sentences that they don't like, if those sentences don't grab them, they've got a pile this big, so they're looking for any reason at all to say no. You misspelled the agent's name, you didn't format it the way they asked you to format it. It makes their job easy if you give them one excuse. You can have the best story possible, but you misplace a comma in the first sentence, they love that, because I've seen this, and if we worked these jobs, we would love it too. We'd be like, thank you for giving me a reason not to have to look at this anymore. And so your chances of getting out of that are horrible. And I knew that, so I started giving the book away to friends, and I thought I'd put it on a website for free. And I had an editor friend, and you from a forum, read it and say, I read a lot of science fiction. This is better than anything I've read in the bookstores lately. This is the first qualified book. You've got to, don't put this on your website. Try to get this published. This deserves to be in a bookstore. And I thought, I don't want to go through that whole process of querying and all that stuff you have to do. But I looked into it, figured out what was involved, and so I wrote query letters, and I hated it. I was horrible at it. But within a couple of weeks, I had a couple of small publishers interested, and I went with one of them. So my very first experience with publishing was that I wanted to self-publish. I got talked into going with a publisher, and as they published the book, I realized I can do everything that they're doing. All these tools are available to everyone. This book is printed as a print-on-demand book through CreateSpace, and you just upload a PDF file for the cover and one for the interior. And yes, it takes an entire weekend to do that formatting to upload it. Some people say it's so much work self-publishing. It took me 3 months to write this. It took me 1 weekend to publish it. If you think the publishing is hard, wait till you try writing, because that's where all the time is.
Yeah.
So exactly. So I spend more time responding to emails with my publishers than I spend formatting books and uploading them. That's the easy part. So after that first book, I got a contract for the second one, for the sequel, and I thought, I've been watching what had happened with this first book, and I thought, I'm going to try to do this on my own. And it's kind of what I wanted to do from the beginning. And I knew I could keep the price lower for the reader. I could give books away if I wanted to. I didn't have to ask permission. So with the second book, I did it myself, and I went back and bought the rights to the first book, which was the smartest thing I ever did. Because that book's gone on to do very, very well, and I'm able to keep it at $2.99 as an ebook instead of $12.99. No one will take a chance on you.
Right.
So ever since then, I've been self-publishing, and when things, after 8 or 9 books in a few years, things started really taking off, and agents and publishers were coming to me.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, when things did start taking off. And you did get an agent eventually, right? But it was a little untraditional, the relationship there. And
Yeah, because I told her I didn't want her.
Yeah.
Started off with it.
Tell us about that. That's an interesting story.
Yeah, I mean, who rejects agents? So I've been doing everything backwards. It's like, what's logical? I do the other thing, and somehow it works out. It's not reinforcing. My wife would say I do everything that way. So I started, once Wool started hitting some bestseller lists on Amazon, I started getting calls from agents, and the first thing they would say, like, hello, my name is so-and-so from such and such an agency in New York. We represent, Stephen King and L. Ron Hubbard's, backlist, and they try to sell themselves and then say, just so you know, we're going to be taking 15%. I'm like, who are you? What are you? What's this phone call all about? So, and then I heard from Kristen Nelson, and I don't mind if you take that. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm serious. Seriously. If my wife calls me, I'll probably just take it. You guys will be in on the conversation. Yeah, I'm in the middle of a panel. So, and then I heard from Kristen Nelson, this agent, who knocked my socks off, because the first thing she told me was like, look, I don't think you need me. And I was like, okay, I'm interested. This has always worked with me. And she said, what you're doing in the US, you probably can't improve on with a publisher, because the royalty rates are so different. And she said, But I don't think you should do anything. I don't think you should sign with a publisher in the US, but I think you're missing an opportunity overseas and with the film and TV rights. And I said, tell me more, and she explained what she would do if she represented this work. She would take it to foreign publishers. I already had interest from a TV production company, but she said, we'll take this to the film people. And I said, have at it, let's go for it. I mean, she gets paid when she signs something. She didn't want anything that I was already doing. She just wanted to add to it. And it's been brilliant. She's, we're in 30 territories overseas now, and went from a small TV production offer that I already had, went to like Ridley Scott and 20th Century Fox, and a much bigger deal.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. What do you know about that? Is there anything you can even say about that? Is it just they bought the rights and you haven't heard anything?
Yeah, I mean, they don't tell me anything. Hollywood hates authors. Like they flew me out for a week to meet the screenwriter and have some production meetings and meet with the studio execs, and they were all like, yeah, you wrote a nice book, and I just like stay out of the way and let us make the film. And that has been my attitude the whole time, because I want the film to get made. Yeah. So I don't want to muck it up. And so I've told them, like, your vision for this is perfect, and go for it. They've written a screenplay that's been turned in, so in 1 year, a lot of progress has been made. But I keep telling everyone who asks, it'll never happen, because it's better to have low expectations. A lot of stuff is optioned, and very few things are actually made.
Yeah, Hollywood's it's a different ball of wax.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's entertaining. And I'm happy being optioned. Like, when the renewal comes up, like, re-option it. If you don't want to option it, we'll take it to someone else.
Right. Now, so you're not going to have any input then on the script or on the screenplay at any point, or do they never?
Everything they've told me about their vision and the changes and the things that they want to keep things in love, I agree with all of it. I don't think you should go into films expecting it to be a retelling of the book. If so, why go? You've already seen that story. I think it should pay homage to the medium. One of the reasons I'm here is they're doing a graphic novel adaptation, and I want them to do it the way a graphic novel needs to be done. It's going to be more visual, less dialogue, and I celebrate that. Nothing will change the book. I think some authors get, I've supported fan fiction, which is another.
A little bit too, yeah. Let me ask you this. Okay, so Wool. Let's talk about Wool for a minute, because that's been your big hit, really. You started out selling it just through Amazon. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Through their just through Kindle, straight to Kindle.
Yeah, straight to Kindle. It was just this. It was this many pages.
It was basically almost not even a novella. I mean, really, almost just a long short story. The first section of it.
Yeah, they have it's called the novelette. They have a cute term for it, and Hugo and Nebula actually have categories for it. But it is in between a short story and a novella.
And a novella, right? And that then took off, and you started coming out with. Were you planning to write more?
No.
After that first one, that was one and done, basically.
That was the whole story. I wrote that. I threw it on Amazon's KDP, which is their Kindle Direct Publishing service, which is literally you have a cover, you have a Word document, you fill out some information, like this is my name, this is the title. You hit a button, and it turns out an ebook.
Right. Because that first story, it feels complete.
Yeah.
Really at that point.
How many people have not?
Is there anyone that hasn't read it? Don't want to give spoilers away.
Okay,
so we'll be good.
Darn it, because I can really.
I love spoilers.
I won't mess it up for anybody, but yeah, once you read the first one, you realize, well, why would you write a sequel? But this book started taking off, and all the reviews, you can probably sort them by age on the very original novelette and see all these reviews. They were all 5-star reviews, and they said, this is great, but where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
The only complaint people had was that they wanted more. And I'd be foolish not to. I mean, I've been writing in obscurity for 3 years, begging my first cousin, please read my book. I will pay you money to read it. That's why I should believe in this, And then to have people wanting something, it's like, well, even though it doesn't seem logical that you would write a sequel to this, the demand is there. So I started, and I've also learned a lot from this, because I didn't promote this book at all. This is a lesson for those of you who are thinking about publishing. We are not in control of our fates, and neither are the major publishers. The only control we have is to write the most engaging story that we can, the thing that we're most passionate about. Because major publishers will spend millions of dollars on an ad campaign, and it will not move the needle. A brilliant author like J.K. Rowling will write a book that gets praise from all the critics, like Cuckoo's Calling, and it will not sell many books because she wrote under the name Richard or Robert Goldblay. So there's so much luck involved in this, and I was lucky that Wool, got some of our readers from other stories and took off the way it did. What I look back on appreciatively from now 2 years having passed is that when I had that opportunity, instead of saying I'm satisfied that this short story is doing well, I dropped what I was writing and learned from why readers enjoyed this. They liked that it was short, that it was inexpensive, something they could get to the end of and want to discuss with other people.
Right.
And
And
so,
so the twist ending.
yeah, it had a twist ending, and I can see that you still won't guess it. That's the cool thing about this book. You can tell people it's a twist ending, like, I think I know what it is. And then even having told you, you think you know what it is, you still won't know what it is.
Yeah.
You'll second guess yourself the whole time. And so I wrote 4 more pieces that were all short and followed that pattern. And I've learned later that this is not as original as I thought I was being. That, Ender's Game started off with a short story called The Battle Room, and Fahrenheit 451 started off as The Fireman.
Right.
And they were so well received that the authors said, I'm going to revisit that world.
Right.
And there's also a history of serializing fiction, especially in science fiction.
Yeah, Michael Moorcock had a similar thing with his Elric stories. It was a short story to start with. It was popular.
Yeah. So we're learning, as authors, you need to learn to listen to your audience.
Yeah, that's, so then it did take off.
Mm-hmm.
You got an agent, right? But you're still all digital. Okay,
There's a print edition that was print on demand.
Okay, there's
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning, you have print on demand through the same one that you
Yeah,
said,
through Creative Space.
through Creative Space. Okay, which is
So
a lot like I'm familiar with Blue. Yeah.
Can I tell you about a funny email I got
Yeah.
today?
Yeah.
So I got an email today from a reader saying, I don't understand your books at all. I'm trying to figure out what to read, and there's Wool Proper Gauge is $699 on Amazon, and what are you trying to do, and like, what do you take us for? It's like very angry, and I had to email it back because those original print-on-demand books are now out of print because Simon & Schuster owned the print rights, and there were everyone was reading digital. Only a handful of people have the print books, and these things are actually selling on eBay and and I don't have them. I'm like, why did I print like 500 each of these? And I had no idea until I got this email. They were even going for that. I just did a giveaway. My mom had a knit store and had a bunch of these books in her knit store, and she closed the knit store down. We met in the mountains of North Carolina, and she had this box of books. She was like, here. I'm like, what do I do with these? I did a giveaway. And like, I just mailed them off to people last week, and now they're probably reading my Facebook page and going, this is 600, and I had you make it out to me. I should have made you make it out to eBay.
Yeah.
Dear eBay. So so there were always print books, but
Okay. But they were print on demand and very few.
Very few, very affordable. That's what I love about. This is $12.95. If you know about the history of self-publishing, a self-published paperback like this would have been like $30 back in the old day, because they charge you so much to print it, and you might only make $2 per sale. It's a much better system now. It's not wasteful. They only print it when people order it.
Right. Yeah, print on demand's become huge for a lot of niche topics that, because you're not wasting that much money. Printing huge print runs that aren't going to sell. They're going to sit in a warehouse or sit on the shelves. So.
Yeah, when I worked as a bookseller, I learned a lot as a bookseller. I think if you want to be a writer, work in as many ways in the industry as you can. Intern at a publishing house, work as an editor, do whatever you can to be close to the publishing. Volunteer at book conferences. So whatever you can do to network and to be involved. That's like the zombie just collapsing. I learned a lot from being a bookseller. One of the things I learned was how wasteful the book industry is. Most books that we ordered did not sell, more than half. And we shipped them back to the publisher for our 100% refund from the publisher. And those might go to a remaindering service where they sell them for discount. And then they get shipped back where they end up getting pulped. And in the old days, they got burned. Someone's job was to throw unopened boxes of books in an incinerator. And for those, someone gasped. For people who love books, it's like, why would you do that? So that's what we try to gauge. How many do we think will sell? We do a huge print run in China. We ship these across the ocean. We ship them all over the country. That's why they're so expensive. The future is going to be where they have the printer in the bookstore. Wow. And they have these machines now called the espresso machines. And you have a cup of coffee. You tell them what book you want. The book takes 5 minutes. This book, which is indistinguishable in binding and paper quality and everything from a book from a major publisher, it takes 5 minutes to print. And even as impatient as we are today, I think people wait 5 minutes for a book.
For a book. Yeah. So, but eventually you did make a deal with a real publisher, with Simon & Schuster.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is an interesting story. You were in New York shopping around with your agent Christine, right? So tell us what happened there. How did that come to be?
We went 3 rounds with publishers. The first round was just over the phone and email. They made offers, and they were really crazy offers. Not crazy in a good way, like crazy amounts of money, but crazy as in we're going to change the title of a book that's already sold 100,000 copies. We're going to take this off of print so no one can buy it now that it's gaining all this momentum, and we're going to repackage it properly because you suck at what you do.
And this is cool.
Yeah, so we're going to take it down, and it'll be available a year later, and we'll publish it properly, which is to mean that it won't sell at all. So we, like Kristen and I had a great laugh about these offers, and we went on to sell rights overseas and do the Ridley Scott deal, and went on to be a New York Times bestseller, and even with the crazy title Wool, which everyone wanted to change. And then the second round, we had a publisher said, hey, we want to fly down to North Carolina to meet with you. And I said, that's crazy, Bob. Fly me up, your time is more important. So when I was flying to New York, Kristen reached out to other publishers and said, hey, we're coming back up, do you guys want to revisit this? And she gave them the sales data, and everyone was like, yes, we'd love to revisit this. This is that guy who told us no, right? Yeah, we'll talk to him again. So while I was up there, we had meetings with, at the time there were 6 major publishers in New York, and we had meetings with almost all of them. One that we didn't was Simon & Schuster. And I had this meetup, like when I go to a big city, I'll just post where I'm gonna be, and if you wanna show up at a bar, we'll have like, a Coke and a burger and just talk about whatever you're reading or into. So I did this meetup, and an author friend of mine showed up who knew the editor-in-chief at Simon & Schuster, and he said, hey, does John Carp know about this? And I'm like, I don't know if John knows about this. He seems too big to know about this stuff. And he saw the fan interactions and how excited people were about this. And he said, well, I think you should know. And he emailed John to let him know that I was in town, that they should see me about this. And I thought, well, then nothing will materialize out of that. So we were seeing other publishers while I was there for a few days. And I got an email out of the blue from an editor who said, hey, do you have an agent? And they were asking about Wool. And I thought, what did my friend do to cause this miracle? It was a complete coincidence. This other editor had read it as just a reader and fell in love with it and wanted to make an offer from Simon & Schuster. So she emailed John Carp. John Carp's getting emails about Wool from all these different people. He's like, what in the world?
Unrelated. In this coincidence, they were both hitting
yeah,
at the same time.
and they're like, a book on sheep? Like, what's... so they called us in and they said, John was confused. He only read the first part of it. And we're sitting in his office, just Kristen and I, and to frame this, like all these other publisher meetings were in big boardrooms, like 12 people with mock-up cover art showing us like what their vision was and their marketing plan. And they were like, this is what we can do for you. And the whole time I'm thinking like these are my numbers, this is what I'm doing for myself. How are we gonna do 6 times this for me to break even once you pay me 15% instead of 70%? With Simon & Schuster, instead of saying, this is what we're gonna do for you, they said, what can we do for you? And I thought, that's really interesting. And they said, what are you looking for? And I said, well, I'm doing really good with the ebook, and I love that I can keep the price low, and that I can go directly to the reader. The print book is doing okay. It's showing up in bookstores now, but you guys do print better than anybody. Why don't you take the print rights and run with it? And he was like, well, that's interesting. And no one was willing to offer this, and everyone said a big publisher would never do a print-only deal. But Simon & Schuster, to their credit, they're one of the great mavericks of the publishing industry. And they, a few months later, we were getting more offers in the 3rd round, and we started turning those down. And that's when Simon & Schuster came with the first of its kind publishing deal, where we kept all the rights and they just did the print book.
That's unique. So, has anyone done that since that you know of? Or?
Yeah, a couple other authors have had similar deals since, and then I think that doesn't seem like they're coming anymore. And the whispers that we've heard is that the publishers have kind of circled the wagons and said, let's not do that anymore, because I think They know that the future is, the revenue stream is incredible with digital,
Right.
because these books, and this is something that self-publishing does really well, that would help anyone here who wants to think about writing. Your book will be fresh and available for the next 50 years as an ebook. It will not rot, it won't degrade, it won't change. It'll always be available. You can lower and raise the price all you want. And signing that away is, I think, kind of crazy. I mean, it makes sense to sign a book away if it's going to have 3 to 6 minutes on a bookshelf, and that's the only life it's ever going to have. And that's how books used to operate. But now, with print on demand and ebooks, your book is available forever. It'll never grow stale. And your mental calculation has to change when they say, we'll give you $5,000 for your book. You're out of your mind. But that's what most first-time authors are getting. And they think, well, God, the publisher, this is Random House. They do, I'm with Random House in the UK, and they did 50 Shades of Grey. So you think in your head, you'll do that to my book. And I worked as a bookseller, and I know that most books went spine out down in a dark aisle, and no one was asking for that book. And 6 months later, I shipped it back to the publisher. So it's a different way of thinking about what your rights are worth, and now they're worth a lot more than they used to be.
And I mean, it's interesting too, you mentioned how the publishers now, they tried this, they took a stab at it. Maybe they've realized that's not the right.
Yeah,
and there's certainly
they made money.
I
I know they've made money doing it. So and look, Dust, which I've self-published, just hit the New York Times list. And if a publisher was putting this out in Barnes & Noble and putting it in front of readers, they would be doing very well for themselves. But I think that we've seen recently with the Department of Justice case and Apple, that publishers kind of all talk to each other and they say, this is what we're doing, and all their contracts look the same, because I've seen them all. I don't think they compete with one another very hard. What's great, even for the authors who don't self-publish, because some people need to go the traditional route and it makes more sense. We're the competition. We're helping other authors get better contracts by getting rid of no-compete clauses and better rights, and that's going to trickle down and help the entire industry.
Yeah, well, it's certainly changing the industry, I mean, completely. Publishers, this is something else we were talking about earlier, publishers, they've always at least been able to say, hey, we can publicize your book. That's what we can do. We can get out there, we can advertise it. We've got the marketing machine to put behind it. But again, in this day and age, with social media, word of mouth is so much more powerful than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, the publishers can put tons of money behind something that they think is, this is going to be the next big thing. We're going to invest in this, push this one. But if it doesn't catch on, they've wasted all that money, and yet something over here that they had no idea goes viral, with no backing at all, like what you've done here. And so it's from their point of view, they've got to be a little desperate. You would think, and see if they're smart enough to see the future, that middleman position, is a lot more tenuous.
Yeah, and they still serve a very viable function. I don't think publishers will ever go away.
Yeah.
But it does highlight that you guys have all the power. It's incredible. It's exciting. You guys are the ones who dictate what does well. And so people say, I can't believe 50 Shades of Grey sold that many books. That was the demand. People wanted a book that was full of unsafe things that they could read safely. And this became such a phenomenon that anybody could read it and not be ashamed about it, and because everyone was talking about it. So that was a really cool way to get people interested in romance and erotica, and they went on to discover other titles, and it's been really good for the industry. Twilight is something that took off without a big marketing machine behind it, and I think you guys should celebrate the fact that what you choose to read and what you choose to tell your friends about and share links on Facebook and write reviews for changes people's lives. It changed my life, and now when I can promote someone else's work, if I read a work that I like, I always tell people about it because I know how important it is for that author, for people to hear. And for the fan fiction authors as well, who are now getting readers of their own through writing works in the world of wool.
Right.
I celebrate that.
Now that's interesting. Let me get your question. Can we?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
We get a lot of questions. I might be talking about stuff no one cares about.
Yeah, that's right. Why don't we? Go ahead. We'll do some questions.
I'd like to ask, personally, author to author, what do you do when you hit a writer's block?
like writer's block and you can't write. You know, I've told myself that I don't believe in writer's block. What I believe happens is that we can't write the quality material that we expect of ourselves. And I've learned to get comfortable writing complete dreck, knowing I'm gonna delete it all later. But what's important is to like prime the pump by writing something at all. What sometimes happens in a story, if you feel like you don't know what to do next in the story, it's because you made a mistake a page before. Your character did something out of character. Your subconscious knows the whole story. And you've gotten way off the track. And you need to go back to the last time you were excited about the story. Take everything you've written after that and copy it to another document. And that saves you the psychic agony of having deleted work. So put that in another document. I guarantee you'll never use it again. You'll never look at it. It's as good as deleted, but you'll feel safe because you've done this. And then start writing from the time that you were excited again. And introduce a new character, kill a beloved character, throw a mystery, you know, throw something new into it back when you loved the story and see how it unravels. It sounds like a lot more work, but it's much more work to try to revise something you're not happy with into perfection than it is to write something new from scratch.
When writing, do you consider the idea of a movie coming out of it?
No, but I do. The way I try to write is, I think, a very cinematic method where it's like daydreaming, where I want to be in the character's head. I usually write in either first person or third person limited, both of which are the point of view of one character per scene. And so I am in that space that they're in, and I see the world as they're seeing it, and I hear the people talking and smell and feel. You know, that's how you get all those tactile senses. And so it's kind of like putting yourself in a 3D version of the film and describing what's going on. I know there are authors who write great by saying, okay, this could be a movie, I need to have these acts and all that, but I've never tried that before. It might work for me, but I mean, I still don't, even with a film bill, I don't believe it's going to happen. So I'm so pessimistic about the whole thing.
And I actually have a second question, it's kind of like a follow-up. Have you ever been hired, it's a two-parter, have you ever been hired to write like a continuation of another story, like another author that you're maybe working on something with, or that he started working on something and wanted your help with it?
I've had some interesting offers lately to write in a shared world. I've had several of these offers, and some of them are interesting, but my readers are like, just impossible to please. They want sequels to everything, they want new series, anything I tell them about, like, yeah, write that next. Yeah, I need to hire James Patterson to write some of my books. Sorry.
And then what do you do with that? Or like, then how would you go about doing a project like that? Like, what would be your process?
If I was working with someone else?
Yeah, like
I
to
don't
continue
know.
another story.
I've never done it before. I mean, I'm writing my first piece of fan fiction now, and that requires understanding the source material. So you have to read up and just assume that this is your world and then play in it.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing now with the piece.
Did your experience with NaNoWriMo influence using CreateSpace at all, or was that always the direction you were planning on going?
Yeah, it's a great question. I use Lightning Source as my printer to start with because I was heard there was better distribution, and there is into bookstores. Unfortunately, bookstores don't carry self-published books, but Amazon sells a lot of self-published books. So I discovered CreateSpace by participating in NaNoWriMo, which for those who don't know, it's National Novel Writing Month. Yeah, and you, in the month of November every year, tens of thousands of people write an entire novel in 1 month, 50,000 words, just rough draft. And so I've done this the last 4 years, and with my first NaNoWriMo win, everyone who completes it wins. I got a coupon for a free proof copy from CreateSpace. And as soon as I saw the quality of the book was the same, if not better, than Lightning Source, the paper was thicker, and so you couldn't see the words, I just loved it. And then I noticed that my sales were better because I was in Amazon, and now instead of saying like only 12 more left, like the way Lightning Source is integrated with Amazon is not as clean because Amazon owns CreateSpace, and they can handle the distribution and the fulfillment much quicker. So I'm so impressed that I've started taking the books I had at Lightning Source and moved them to CreateSpace. And I now, for those of you who want to be writers, there's a trifecta of publishing tools that I consider like this is my main source, KDP, which is for ebooks, Kindle Direct Publishing, CreateSpace for the print books, and then ACX for the audiobooks. You can now self-publish audiobooks by teaming up with voice actors, and they volunteer their time, and you volunteer the source material, and you'll make half the royalties each. So you can make an ebook with zero outlay. It's incredible.
Do you also self-edit?
I do about 8 or 9 passes, which gets the book pretty clean. Then I give it to my wife and my mom, and they tell me how horrible it is. So then I do another pass, and then it goes to beta readers, and they tell me how horrible it is. And then I use that input to produce a book that hopefully not as many people will tell me how horrible it is.
I had a question back here.
Well, actually, 2 questions around it, but NaNoWriMo. And I'll start one first. When you're doing a NaNoWriMo, they suggest you just write it straight through because it's just for the month, and then you don't edit as you go along. And I'm wondering what your editing process is as far as, other than the delete from where you lost your excitement and started. How much reworking you do as you go along, or how much you just go all the way through it and then go back and edit?
Yeah, that's your first question. I try to write straight through and then worry about the revising afterward. I'm not always great at that. Sometimes I'll get to a point where I feel like I need to know the story where it goes forward a little bit better and give my brain time to process it. And instead of spending that time checking email and doing other stuff or just staring at the book, I'll start revising back for a chapter and fleshing it out more, and then somehow, okay, now I know what happens next. But I advise people against that because that's usually what keeps people from finishing a book. The only reason I finished my very first novel was because I didn't do that. And the only way I feel comfortable doing a little bit now is because I no longer tell myself I can't write a book, which is what first-time writers tell themselves as they're getting frustrated. But it's much easier if you don't do that. If you just say, okay, that's a mess, I'm gonna fix it later. I'll type like the word bookmark or 3 X's or something here to know if I need to do something, yeah, and then come back. What's your second?
The other thing was, you said it dawned on you could do everything that the publisher was doing. What are those things?
Well, the main things you need, so the writer does most of the work. People will tell you that writing is collaboration, and it is. There are people who help you out, but the hard part is amassing like 100,000 words that make sense to tell a story, a coherent story. That's the hardest part. If it wasn't, publishers would just like use their machines to make a bunch of stories and see which one's the best and publish that. But they need writers. That's the hardest part. You need to edit the book so that it's perfect, and you can do that by trading resources with other writers and workshops, employing friends and family who either love you a whole bunch or don't hate your work. You can do that by taking your editing seriously. A lot of people think they're self-editing, but they do like 1 pass and think they've cleaned it all up. You need to do 6, 7, 8, 9 passes and get it as perfect as possible in beta readers. So that's the editing process, that whole bubble of things. The other thing is cover art and presentation, which is your blurb, things like that. Those are the things that a publisher does for you. The promotion, the marketing, they're gonna ask you, even with a major publisher like Penguin, they're gonna ask you, okay, how do you plan to, like what's your social media platform? They wanna see how strong your reach is because they know you're responsible for selling their book for them. And if you can paginate it and produce the work, get it edited, package it, and make this final product, you can do most of what a publisher is doing. I liken this, imagine an artist who paints on a canvas and then says he doesn't care what kind of matting, what kind of frame, if you hang it upside down or sideways, I don't care. Like put tungsten orange light on it if you want. I don't know many artists who would say that. And I approach my writing the same way, where I'm not content just to write the words. I care about the entire package. When I paginate, sometimes I'll realize, oh my God, this sentence ends on the 2nd page, but if I squeeze the kerning a little bit, it'll end right here, and that'll give the readers like an intake of breath to read the answer to that piece of dialogue. It happens all the time, and it influences the reading experience to do that. And so, I take all that very seriously, and that's part of my anal retentiveness, I guess. always. I still do it just to see what it looks like on the device, you know? Like
Right? I could just say, oh, let me go buy my book, and hey, everybody, mom, whoever, buy my book, right? But,
that'll sell you about, like, you'll tell everyone you know, all your friends and family, yeah, you'll sell 7 copies, and one of them will read it, and even they won't write a review, so that's,
Right.
and then you're like, you're like, okay, I'm going to sell 1,000 copies of this, and you realize that's a lot of people. I don't know
Right.
1,000 people.
the other thing, you mentioned cover art. What did you do initially when you were self-publishing as far as cover art? When you're doing it on Amazon, is it that blank page type thing that you see a lot of books, or did you have some type of cover art on that? And then what happened when you moved on from there to the print, to the creative?
Yeah, the Create Space.
Create.
Well, CreateSpace is you're self-publishing, so you have to give them cover art. They have cover art generators, but they're very basic.
So what did you do?
I always made my own, but and again, that sounds like a lot of work. It would take me like 1 weekend, and I loved doing it. I would set up a photo shoot with my wife, and like one of my old covers had her hand on the cover, and then a space background. I found the guy, the astronomer who took the picture, and he gave me credit to use the backdrop, and I made a planet. I just sat with Photoshop for hours until it didn't look horrible. And some people would say, it still looks horrible. But even my original Molly Fine cover, my very first one, looks so good that and I was using it as a promo, like this, I hadn't finished the book, like this is gonna be the cover when it's done. And it was so good that when I signed with that small press, they were like, we would love to use that cover. It was probably better than what they would have come up with on their own. So I take the cover creation seriously, and I enjoy it as like just a craft.
So what format does that have to be in?
I usually have PDF, which if you're using Photoshop, it'll export it, but if it's a JPEG, you can convert it. But it needs to be high res. I recommend using Photoshop, and I've invested in all those programs. And for a while when I was broke, I would go to the library and use their editions. You can self-publish a book even if you don't own a computer. You can go to the library for 2 hours every day, which is a good way to write because it forces you to forget the distractions in your life. And yeah, this is available to anyone. It's like someone's shooting a video right now, they can publish that to YouTube if they want. And
It's not going to. It's getting
But-
good for me.
But you can if you want.
I know it's good.
And hi, Mom. People are shooting movies now and uploading them, and they're available anywhere. I've seen people now kickstarting. The guy who's writing my comic, Jimmy Palmiotti, who's does some incredible work. He kickstarts his own comics so he can do what he wants to do. This is, I thought about this recently. Karl Marx had this great idea that the people would own the rights of production one day, that somehow they would own factories, that they would rise up. But what happened is the factories shrank down. And now people print their own plastic devices in their homes, and people can get on a laptop and mix their own audio, and people can kickstart their own comic books. And so we've reached that democratization, but it's because of capitalization. I'm on like on a political economic thing. That's what this panel's about. It's a really exciting time that books are now in the domain of everyone.
I picked up Wool after it was reviewed on Boing Boing. How did you get Cory Doctorow to review it, and how was the bump after that?
So Cory didn't. I don't think Cory has read any part of Wool. I sent him a copy. Cory, if you're watching this on YouTube, I want that copy of Wool back. I got an email today. Those things go for $700, and it's sitting in your slush pile. I'll pay the postage. Just please send me that book back. I don't have it. I sent Cory a copy of the very first Wool, and it was just a novelette. And he's swamped. I know what he's like. I get books from everybody now, and I want to read them all, but you can't. You just don't have the time. Jason Weisenberg is the guy who reviewed it, and he found it. The guy is an adventurous reader, like probably a lot of you are to be in here and even know who I am. He loves picking up unknown stuff, and then if it's great, he loves to review it, and he makes careers. But when I think Geek Dad, Wired.com's Geek Dad blog was the first major media outlet to review Wool. Boing Boing happened very soon afterwards. Reddit got a hold of it as well. It's amazing what one mention like that is. you can't, if I would have sent my book off to Jason, he probably wouldn't have read it. You know, there's just, you don't have, the control that you have is to write the best story possible. And that means in the first sentence, write something so shocking that people have to read the second sentence. And then you've got to hook at them, don't let any slack up. You know, that's all you can control. And after you publish, keep writing, right? Tell yourself that your 12th book is going to be your bestseller, and how many books do you have to write to get there? You have to write 11 of them. And then that one's going to be the one that takes off, because that'll keep you focused. I would hate to be put on this free throw line right now to win an NBA championship, because there'd be a lot of disappointed fans when that thing bricked off the rim. I would need to shoot, you know, 1 million free throws before you put me in that line, and the noise and the pressure of that situation went away, and I could nothing but net. And how do you do that as a writer? You can't write one book and say, I'm going to send this out and it's going to be magic, you know. It frustrated my dad when I wrote my first novel that I wouldn't market it more. And I told him I have my whole life to market. I don't feel like writing today. And it was the best thing I ever did. My dad's usually right, but I was right that time. Kim? Sure.
Do you agree with doing things like publishing chapter after chapter? Like,
I don't like, you know, I serialize the story. I don't like publishing chapters unless you're giving it all away for free, because I feel like a reader will feel as if they're being strung along. I do think if you're telling, if each, what you're calling a chapter is like a story with its own arc, where there's a satisfying conclusion, I think that's okay, because that's how comic books come out.
yeah.
Each comic tells a story, but then there's a larger arc. You know, I'm reading Saga right now, and each one ends being like, oh cool, that has a great ending. But I want to read more because there's this whole, it's like a soap opera. You know, like so-and-so's in a coma, when are they gonna wake up? By the time that's resolved, there's like 5 other things you care about. You know, it's like Lost, except I actually know where I'm heading with my story.
Okay, I've written 3 novels, and they're on KDP, Create Space, Amazon. They own 3 of them are trade paperbacks, and they're all ebooks, $3.99. And I don't know what to do to market. I mean, I've had these written for a while, and they've been on for a while. I'm a ghostwriter now, and I write a lot.
Do you write for James Patterson?
Pardon?
You don't write for James Patterson?
No,
Okay.
I kind of can't stand that after a while. You read enough of those. Anyway, thing is that I'm kind of stuck, you know. I've never marketed them. I didn't know what to do, how to push them. I got testimonials out the butt on all of them. I mean, you guys, really good, competent readers and professionals. And they're on my websites. I've got 2 websites. And I don't know what to do to market.
You know, I didn't know what to do to market my books either, so I would do anything that I thought of. When I was writing before I even published my first book, any downtime I had, like I'm done my writing for today, and I have free time. Instead of doing what normal kids do, which would be to go out and have fun, I started a blog about writing, and this is my journey, so my friends and family can keep up with my progress in getting a book written. I started tweeting in the voice of my characters, which actually got the attention of one of the publishers that I got an offer from.
You're tweeting in the voice of your character?
Yeah, so and I still have an email address that's mollyfied@gmail, because I thought this would be the only book I ever wrote. So like I had a Mollyfied website, I had a Mollyfied Twitter account. It's very confusing later when people are emailing me like, hello, miss. And then I still come up with crazy ideas. I recently, going to a Boing Boing conference, I came up with the idea of, I wanted to give some books away, but I didn't know how to get a whole bunch of books out to the West Coast. So I came up with this custom thumb drive that looks like a fallout shelter sign, and it's got, and if you've read Wool, it says property of IT, do not remove from level 34, and looks beat up. And on here, this is an actual USB stick.
That's so cool.
Yeah, Wool, Shift, and Dust are all on here in 2 different formats, DRM free, and there's instructions on how to load them. And so this conference, we had 320 seats, and there was one of these on every seat. And then I came up on stage and told them how I appreciate Corey's views on DRM, even though he hasn't read my book or returned it. and that, you know, not to fear giving your stuff away. And here's my entire trilogy, best-selling trilogy for free. Enjoy it, pass it along, put it on eBay. I don't care. So that was an idea recently.
That's cool.
My zombie book, I'm signing them here, and I blood splatter them, and I don't know, having a website and blogging, being on forums where I was helping people out, I wasn't there to sell my book. I would never tell people you should read my stuff. I would just answer any questions I could, tell any humorous anecdotes of what I'm going through, and then over a 3-year period, all these efforts kind of coalesced into forming a relationship with people who wouldn't have been unhappy to see me do okay. Part of it, I think, is being yourself and getting your personality out there so that people can see, like, this is the author who's trying to make it. If you like his story a little bit, you might, you like him a little bit, that goes a long way toward, wanting to see the book do well. So those are the things that I've done just organically and trying things out over the years. They don't take a lot of time. It just takes consistent energy and effort.
Are you doing your own audio?
No, I use ACX to find voice actors who do the recording. There are some people who, like Scott Sigler, I think, records his own, and Nathan Lowell. They do a great job. You can hear from sitting here, like, my voice puts you to sleep. It's just monotone, and everybody's like, oh. These people who do it well.
Well, I've tried to read mine. I read half of mine into it, and you make mistakes.
Yeah.
And if you screw up,
You have to know how to edit. Yeah, you have to know how to.
You really got, it's a real problem, doing that.
I mean, it's the professionals, but some authors can do it.
But how much do they charge to do that? How do they work?
Depends on, you can do it one of two ways. You can do a royalty share where they don't charge you anything. They like the work and they believe that they can help sell you copies, and you make it 50-50.
Well, there are something like, how many, 3 million truckers on the
Yeah,
highway?
listening to ebooks, audiobooks.
Yeah.
My wife listens to them all the time. It's one of the great untapped revenue streams. For anyone who's thinking about writing, do not ignore the audiobook. Make sure you get it started. As soon as the book is complete and ready to go on ebook and CreateSpace, remember that triangle, like you're doing KDP, CreateSpace, and ACX, because I'm shocked at what the audiobook does. I met an author at Worldcon last year who said that she was making more on her audiobooks than her ebooks. And I was like, what, why don't I have an audiobook? And so she motivated me to go home and investigate this. And I had already written 10 books, and over the last year, I've gotten them all put out in audiobook.
As far as audiobook, what format do you find that people are utilizing? Are they popping in a CD, or are they using some kind of, are they doing a download to some kind of drive, or what, Because I have a 1997 car sitting out there, I don't know what people are using, okay?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the question about.
Cassette player in it.
Yeah. Yeah, really cassette adapters you have to use to pipe anything in here. I've gone through so many of those. So the question about the format people listen audiobooks, most people listen to them by downloading them onto an iPhone or a music player, and the two #1 sources for buying those are iTunes and Audible. When you go through ACX, it's going to put that book on the 3 that matter, the only 3 really that matter for digital, and that's Amazon's webpage that'll show up with your ebook and your physical book. Audible.com, which is probably the best place for audiobooks online, and iTunes, which has a lot of users. So when you do ACX, it takes care of all 3 of those automatically. It does it for you, you don't have to think about it. If someone buys it, you just get a royalty.
So are people not really using like any other,
Some people
like
do.
a hard copy form, or
Yeah.
are they mainly using digital?
Some people do hard copies, but they're expensive to produce. So it's like with print versus ebooks as a self-published author. How do I get the print book to everybody? It's so difficult to do this distribution. With ebooks, I write it and anyone can sit in their bathroom. Like, I'm in people's bathtubs. I know that's horrifying. Like, people are in their bathtub, they finish the book and they're like, oh, there's the next book. And I don't have to knock on their door. I don't have to go to their local bookstore and get the book in there.
Not to monopolize, but I guess with how you're talking about the self-publishing, how the book's not printed until it's ordered.
Yeah.
Would it not be the same with an audiobook where it's not burnt until it's ordered?
I don't know of anyone doing that. That'd be a great model. You should start that company.
Can I get the?
Yeah. Patent that right now.
He had one to be here for a while.
Yeah, as a reader fan, sorry to jump back a bit, but you mentioned the democratization of everything, music, books, movies. It brings us to so many things everywhere. I get overwhelmed, honestly, looking for, and that's how I found your novel. That's how I found a lot of different novels I'm reading now, is just looking at best lists and top lists and forums, but there's so many, and I can take a risk on a small price, and sometimes I don't want to take a risk on a bigger one, but maybe really good. And like, what makes it easier to find? I mean, among the now millions instead of hundreds. What do we do for that?
I used to, when I was a kid, I walked into a bookstore, even a Walden Books, which is small. I felt the same way. Like, how am I going to find that one book I want to go home with, and create that pile of books in my house? Like, books were such a painful decision. You're going to invest a lot of time. So I would sit and read the first 5 pages and see if I wanted to read the rest. You can do that with almost every ebook. You click on the sample and read a page, and you can find out in 5 minutes if it's been edited, and if it's a gripping story, and if it's your style of writing, if it's in the point of view you like, first person, present, past, So I recommend using the samples. I also recommend just browsing randomly. Find a book you like and look at the also boughts and go like 5 pages in. Don't even look at the first 4 pages. Go 5 pages in, click on a book. Don't even look at that book. Go 5 pages in the also boughts in that one and click on a book. And now you just branched so deep into the bookstore, you don't even know where you are anymore. And now just start looking at covers, looking at blurbs, read some samples. You might be the person who finds that book that tells your friend who tells 10 people, and then they're sitting up on a panel like this wondering what the hell happened to them. And that's probably what happened to me, that someone, the right people found my book, maybe through my Molly Fide series. And then they were the kind of people who write reviews and tell all their friends on Facebook and Twitter, like, you won't believe this story. And again, that's the power you guys have. Not all of you have to do that. Some people, their friends tell them what to read, and they trust their advice. They're getting their bread by them, they blog. And so they read that next book and they enjoy it. And there are other people who are connectors, who are the ones who enjoy. I was that kid in music stores. I only bought albums I'd never heard of. And I bought it just on how cool the band name was. And most of it was horrible, but I would find, like, I discovered several bands that later became really huge, and I was like one of the first to listen to them. And that was what I enjoyed, like feeling like I was part of that process of telling everyone in my school, like, you should really listen to Blind Melon. And we saw them in Charlotte with 20 people in the audience, and a 6-inch stage, and we're like, high-fiving the band while they're playing. And then later, like, I can't get, the band sells out within a year, and I'll never forget that concert more than any big stadium. And that's, the indie music scene has a lot to teach us about the indie publishing scene.
That's something I enjoy and wish there was an analog in publishing, is that I know a concert venue that has music I like. And I can go to any night they have a band and like it. I don't know if I can necessarily do that yet with.
You need to start that. That's what we need. We need a book club. Now indiereader.com is a website for people who want to look for the great indie books. They have all these readers on staff who are always reading indie books. When they like a book, they put it on their front cover. So you can't pay to get on there. You have to write great works to get on there. And there are websites.
It sounds like.
Yeah, Goodreads is a great place to discover. There's tools like that. If you're close to coming up with a new model, though, I think, in your head, do it and launch it. Yeah.
Guys, we're out of time. Yep. But real quick, I got a minute here. Let's plug some of your latest stuff that's coming out. You had Dust, just came out last week. You got the graphic novel that's coming out in a couple of months. What else?
I think in November, yeah. That's I can't tell you about the fan fiction thing because it's top secret.
Okay.
And then we got the 5th Molly Fide book and some new series. I'm sorry, I'm not going to write more of the Wool series. That's what he's crying about. So this is the last one.
Just wraps it up. Okay.
That's for people on camera, that's a 40-year-old man back there.
Well, guys, listen, if you do have more questions for Hugh, please go back to his table. He's back there in Artist Alley, right in the sort of the center, in the back of the exhibition hall. I'm sure he'd love to sit down and chat with you. He's got books that he'll sign for you. He'll splatter them with blood even.
That's your wife's book, by the way. I'm so out of Wool, I'm sorry about that.
This is a problem. So, listen, thank you very much. Let's give everybody give a big hand.
Thank you.